So today's plan is that we would begin with archaeological anthropology. We'll also see various places where the questions, actually the syllabus covers archaeological anthropology. But before all that, I told you in the other class that if it was archaeology, if not anthropological theory, if you're doing archaeological anthropology, don't try to miss it in the class. If you take that seriously, fine, otherwise. I want to begin the class with two very important developments of the recent past. Today is 13th, right? Something was happening out there. People who are from that part of the country, from Kasi, you must be the clear victims of what is going on out there. Kashi Vishwanath temple, the vicinity of the temple, there's a lot of demolition that was going on. About 300 odd different structures were actually brought down. And I wanted to pick this story to begin with because this is one other occasion on which we find Archaeological Survey of India has been at loggerheads with the Government of India. So the three entities here that were in use. One was Archaeological Survey of India, the second one was Government of India, third, the victims or the people who are displaced from there. The various reasons that are actually shown by the government. So this actually is at another instance where the Prime Minister tries to show his grit in whatever he would want to do. I don't want to give any adjectives out there. The reasons that are actually being shown, two very interesting things. He wanted the region to be the region to be converted into a Kashi Vishwanath, the corridor rather, the temple corridor, the 49 odd temples that are there, they're all to be connected to one another. And then Government of India was also saying that we would have to go with the planting of a good many number of trees out there, and then greening of the region, cleaning of the region, roads to be expanded, connectivity between all the temple sites to be, and more than anything else, it is also said that Mr. Vishwanath, Kashi Vishwanath, has to see the Ganges from the temple, which actually is not visible from the temple. Archaeological Survey of India was actually of the opinion, this was the last thing that I wanted to say, but then I'm putting it in the first statement itself. ASA was of the opinion that if Kashi Vishwanath want to see the Ganges, she is actually sitting on the head of the Shiva himself. You need not have to create some kind of visibility for him. But then keeping this apart, there were various stories that were coming into picture. This is not the first time that Archaeological Survey of India and Government of India were at that heated discussion. Long time back in the context of Ram Setu also the kind of problem emerged. At which time, Archaeological Survey of India is that organization which though is given the task of protecting the culture, material culture of the country, this is an organization that is truly based on the scientific evidences. An organization that doesn't rely on something that is mythological. So it was at that point of time, ASA had made a statement that when Ram himself was a mythological figure, if a bridge was constructed by him as his, or maybe his Vanar Sena would be equally mythological, cannot be proved to be a reality. And that was the major first occasion when RSS and the friendly groups were actually with all weapons against ASI. This was the second major instance where ASI is actually fighting with none other than the Prime Minister himself. And the kind of swiftness with which the whole thing happened, and more or less a secrecy, we must say, because not much of a media there, and hence with more or less a secrecy with which the whole thing had happened, that's where ASI is also disturbed. What ASI believes is based on the Sangh Parivar's ideas. Sangh Parivar is of the opinion that these are all the temples of the ancient times, and the responsibility of protecting the temples lies with us. ASI says that most of these temples have actually been erected during the 18th century, and some of them even in the 19th century. And even if we believe that these were the temples that were constructed a long time back, ASI is of the clear opinion that most of these, if at all the temples had to be constructed, they had to be during and after the Gupta period. And what the Sangh Parivar says is that these were the ones that have come into existence much earlier to the Mauryan regime. ASI says that temple architecture had come only after the Mauryan times. So historically there is a problem there. Historically, there is a problem there, and ASI very clearly says that before 2000, they are of the opinion that none of these major temples were existing. Are you there? So there is, and this is something like a challenging some faith that was existing from maybe hundreds of years, if not thousands. And ASI is also disturbed with something else. What it says is that maybe the kind of PWD groups that are being given the contract to clear and rebuild the structures there, ASI says that PWD is not entitled to such kind of responsibility. And if at all you go back and see the work of Archaeological Survey of India, we find there that globally there are important sites like Angkor Wat temples, which were actually preserved with the assistance of Archaeological Survey of India. Different organizations from across the world were actually called for their participation, and ASI was given a major role. Now the cry of this organization is that globally people are calling and taking our assistance, and our own people are recognizing our scientific kind of services. And that's how things are. That is a major controversy. And the second thing with which I wanted to begin this class is, Prime Minister also had introduced a very significant change in the way we were dealing with the archaeological structures. Now we are opening all our archaeological structures for very open photographing and videographing, which was prohibited earlier. This was, I think you must have come across this, if at all you had gone to any particular kind of museums for that matter. Within the museums, photography and videography was not permitted. And even if you go to some of the museums, they on chargeable basis they would allow 70 rupees, 100 rupees they charge, and they would allow. And that in a way discourages people from taking the photographs and videographs. Now the Prime Minister says is that this is the wealth that we have, we are supposed to exhibit it to the rest of the world, and the tool with which we can do is photographs and videographs. And I think that is where you are trying to. And he is also making one very interesting remark, and which is factually true also. We have hundreds of sites in the country belonging to various historical and prehistorical times. And out of all these, I think not more than 12 or 15 sites attract foreign tourists. Anyway, local tourists are not interested in any of those sites, but then even if a foreign tourist comes, those 10 or 15 sites alone would attract the entire attention of them, meaning that the rest of the sites are actually struggling for the recognition. Only some kind of errant historian or archaeologist would only try to make a walkthrough into those places, and others are rather we are not really interested in. This is, I think, these are the very interesting things this man is doing. What I find is that those organizations that have been doing, that have been given the central role, whatever may be the department, whatever may be the ministry, those I think are pushed aside so that several other people, several other organizations can come in and do the stuff. But this is where the problem is, Kashi Vishwanath temple. The people who are displaced from there, many of them are pandits themselves, the Brahmanical priests who are giving services there, and small-time business people there. I mean, the kind of, tailors and kind of stuff. All of a sudden, your life actually has taken a big jolt. And the people out there, they say that tourists may not be coming there, pilgrims may not be coming there to see our roads, but I think they are going to, they come here to see our culture, the way we live with the Kashi Vishwanath, and then the kind of, chemistry that we have with the environment. That's what is much more important rather than seeing the blacktop roads. In an unsaid manner, Prime Minister had already spoken about the cleaning of the Ganges. So I think what could be next on cards is the way we dispose of our half-burned carcasses into the Ganges. I think that is what is going to be changed in the near future. And I think that is where the several Brahmanical populations are going to be all arms against this man. I'm not expressing my happiness on that, but these are some of the things the Prime Minister in action out there. I know most of us must be following the kind of activities this man is doing. This is one. So, I was asking this some time back about your venturing into any museums for that matter. I did ask you, right? Any museums that you must have visited. Yeah? And any hands that we got that day? I'm afraid not. Any museums apart from Salarjung Museum, yes. But Salarjung to aapko dekhni hai jaane se pehle Hyderabad se. Any museum for that matter. You went to Nagarjuna Sagar, Nagarjuna Konda kind of places. No? You went, no? You must have నీళ్లు పడతా ఉన్నా అక్కడ అన్ని గేట్లు ఓపెన్ చేసి పిలుస్తా ఉన్నారు రారా అని కృష్ణమ్మ పరుగులు తీస్తా ఉంది. हाँ सर. People from Pune? कौन है? पुणे से कौन है? ना महाराष्ट्र से आप लोग सब तो हो ना. हाँ कुछ देखा है? Because Maharashtra is known for several archaeological sites. गलती से ना kind of. I would want to begin the class paying homage to this man called H.D. Sankalia. You can't really make out what's there in the face, but then. If at all anybody has studied in Pune, this is the Deccan College where this man is standing. On the behind him is actually in the background is one massive making of this man who had arranged all the strata of Maharashtra there. Various archaeological strata, and he tried to put various things that people have discovered, especially his own discoveries across different parts of Maharashtra. Abhi ghar aap वापस जाओगे तो देख लेना एक बार. Visit the museum. Because people from across the world come to see Deccan College Museum. कई बार होता है, we stay just near to such kind of significant places, we don't even recognize the presence of them. Recognizing their significance is a secondary thing. You're all good today? Huh? After yesterday's feel अच्छा था लिखने का, test लिखने का. That's a genuine question from me. Feel अच्छा था, test कितने लोग लिखे थे? हाथ बताएं. Good numbers. Thank you so much. So I have a good work. Sandeep, you're not there? You're good. I think I'll have a good work. Sir, I love being with them. That's a rarity in Indian strata, actually. We have very handful of fossil evidences in the country. Very few museums have this privilege of, see how beautifully we are looking at each other. as if we are going to kiss each other. Just imagine the one gets up and then holds me on. Credits to that old man who was actually supervising the museum. I asked him to click some photographs, and then he did this in such a beautiful manner. I'll show. And this one was actually found at Nevasa, once again from Maharashtra. I'll actually show you some very beautiful archaeological places from across the country, inviting you to identify them. ठीक है? ये तो हमारा ही है. A picture from Archaeological Survey of India's own site. देखा तो देख लेना जाने से पहले एक बार, प्लीज. हमारी भी कुछ न हो जाए इनकम. शाम में जाना बारामती, कुछ शो भी होता है, लाइट एंड म्यूजिक शो. खुद भी नाच सकते हो और काइंड ऑफ दिस वन. किसकी बीवी है? शहंशाह का है. Don't mistake. The problem is there were several replications of this. That was that magnificent place I was talking about in one of my classes earlier. अगर मौत हो तो ऐसी हो, खबर हो तो ऐसा हो. Kind of people would actually, yeah. Most of us must have visited Agra, है ना? दिल्ली जाते हैं, आगरा भी जाते हैं. Know him? No, great answer. Who? Jahangir's uncle అంటారా ఏమంటారా? ఫాదర్ ఇన్ లా అంటారా? ఫాదర్ ఇన్ లా. అంకుల్ అని మొత్తం క్లాసిఫికేటరీ టర్మినాలజీ. This is one other very beautiful structure, Radha Swami temple and all that stuff, just near to Radha Swami. So next time जब जाओगे तो ताजमहल को थोड़ा रहने दें. थक्का मारा है, कलर भी चेंज हो रहा है, कैंसर आ गया and all that people say marble cancer and all that stuff. सफाई करने की कोशिश करें, निकल ही नहीं रहा. Deep rooted cancer out there. तो इनको देख लेना. यहाँ पर कोई मिलता नहीं है आपको. Not a single fellow there. एक परिंदा भी नहीं मिलेगा आपको. आराम से फोटो खींच सकते हो. हाँ. Several people are there from that area, है ना? अब इसका तो आप पिक्चर तो मत बताइए, बट one other side there, very popular one, है ना? The place where sun is worshipped. Where do we have moon temples in the country? This is a sun temple, right? Sun is somebody whom we worship. Apart from Egyptians, Indian civilization is also very popular for worshipping sun. Moon. There are some neglected gods. Moon is one neglected god, Brahma is the other one. Poor fellow, creator himself is not worshipped at all. On the other hand, destroyer is worshipped. It very clearly shows that creator cannot do anything more than creating. But a destroyer can destroy anything, and hence there is a fear there. Most of the time you worship because of fear, not because of love. We had spoken about this to him the other day. Gods of fear. ये वाला क्या है? Sir? Great. Going back in time and trying to study there. अब ये पता नहीं हो तो we have to look for a glass of water. to take a dip and die. कौन बताए? I really love those winding states that are hardly used now. And look at the gate of the structure, the kind of maintenance that we have, the rusted gate. That actually shows the kind of spending that we have on the monuments. People from western part of India will be able to talk about this. Very intricate architecture, you see. By any standards, I think that is much more superior than, people may not agree, but then that may be much more superior than that of Taj Mahal itself. It actually shows how marketing can play a role. Taj Mahal is marketed very well because that was constructed by the king himself, the emperor of India himself. And hence he had given that kind of a marketing. Here marketing thoda dhila tha. So, people from nearby, if at all you haven't ventured into these places, I think you have to go. So I think they have to be there on your checklist, visit list rather. No? Next time कभी अगर आपको कहीं tourism पे जाना हो, गोवा छोड़िएगा. गोवा बहुत घूम लिया गोवा. जा के पता नहीं क्या क्या हो रहा है. Kind of. I'm afraid not. This I don't even believe that you'll be able to. Because when you are not able to recognize a Junagadh thing. Sir, there are few sites that will be specially asked in your exam. This could be one, Kalibangan. Couple of other sites also I tried to bring to you. This is one. Names you must have heard, names you must have heard. So if at all you come from those parts of the country, pay a visit, see what is there. The beauty of these structures in India is you won't find anybody. Literally nobody will be there. You can spend a day, a night, kind of, nobody would ask. हर पत्थर पे अपना नाम लिख कर आ सकते हो. This is another place, Kaushambi, very prestigious place. We are going to see to which cultural age they belong. Those are the kind of questions that we expect in the exam. This is one more very popular one, Lothal. You must have done in your Indus culture, Indus civilization. So, kind of look at the kind of bricks that are laid and the kind of sequencing. Proper rectangles and equal sized ones. People also must have gone Himachal जाते हैं ना. थोड़ा ठंडा सा हो जाए. इधर तो नहीं गए होंगे. సర్ది के मौसम में जाएंगे. ఆహ్లాదకరమైన వాతావరణం కోసం కొండ ప్రాంతాలకి ఎండాకాలంలో వెళ్తారు కదా. అట్లా Suketi. This is my own favorite place. Guesses out there? Huh? Any guesses? Any guesses? और बताएं. First time I had gone there, I was sitting there for a long time. These are the places where you should go all alone, not with them. They are not the places for them. Not even for your family, not even for any friend of any kind. You should have people of common interest. And the interest in the prehistory, interest in antiquity, that's very rare to be found. Actually, there was one that is there on my cards. I am not able to do that for various reasons. I have applied this year, July. I had to cancel. Next year, July, I'll have to. There is something called a culture walk. Culture walk that travels through 3 major countries of Africa, where you go to all those places where the primitive man, the ancestors of man had actually lived and survived. And that is a trip of about 21 days, and I think that's an awesome thing. I'm just waiting for my son to permit me to do that. Last year I booked a slot, he said no, and then we'll have to see. Because he wants to come, that's kilometers of walking which I do not want him to go with. But then this was one such site where I spent 3 days continuously. I went there doing nothing, just sitting there and kind of lutflere, kind of. The place where we find continuous evolution of man, early man in India. We have this site that has evidences of Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and different phases of Paleo there. And we also find the kind of very beautiful art engravings there, paintings there. You find different varieties of colors, of course, predominantly red and black. I'm sure this is easy to recognize. People must have seen several such kind of wells in that part of the country. आपके वो मूवी भी थे ना, आपका वो मूवी भी था, हाँ? पहली, हाँ? हाँ, देखिए. You go to the center of the earth to fetch water there. Where you have water, you don't value. Don't have water, you have such structures. You can see the women in red-colored clothing, especially walking down and up. Mostly, they're not here. No, I know, you're searching for them. But generally, globally, getting water is the women's job. Getting water is the women's job, right? Fetching water is the women's job. That was that actually has always been my surprise right from my childhood days. Why is it that only women have to carry those? Ghade leke utha ke ja rahe. You're walking kilometers wherever it is, up and down the hills trying to get water. I do not know in your household today who is responsible for taking care of water. Forget about drinking water, potable, usable water also. I think she is the one who goes to the roadside pump and then she tries to fetch water. What also is very striking for me is this was something, my first paper in culture was on this, that is fights at the water pump. The fights at the water pump. They are actually the women versus women fights only. There are no men out there. Only the women make a queue. Only they fight. See, what for they are fighting? They are fighting to get a pot full of water for the household. Whereas the man out there is standing at a distance and making fun of her. And the very fellow who would be using that water is he himself who made mockery of her. So actually this is a gender role that is assigned not simply in India, wherever you go in the world. Fetching of the water, అందుకే కదా అదే సినిమాది శ్రీమంతుడేనా మహేష్ బాబు గారు చెప్తారు కదా మగవాళ్ళు ఎవరు లేరా నీళ్ళు తేవడానికి అని. ఏం సినిమా అది? మహేష్ బాబు గారిని చూస్తూ ఉన్నారు, ఆయన చేసేది కూడా చూడొచ్చు కదా. భరత్ అనే నేను, గుడ్, థ్యాంక్స్ మాస్టర్. చక్రధర్ మీరు ఎవరు చెప్పారు? ఎవరు చెప్పింది? మీరా? థ్యాంక్స్ నాన్న. తెలుగు సినిమా పరువు నిలబడుతున్నావుగా. I'll show you something very, very interesting. Sir, जाने से पहले जाइएगा प्लीज. किधर देख रहे हो? आपसे ही बात कर रहे. किधर गया? That also disappeared by the way you are looking at it. या देखिए, चूड़ी बाजार जाइएगा, साथ में मुझे भी ले जाइएगा. That's a very beautiful place. ये आपका भूल भुलैया ही है. You actually do not know where to go and where to come. You're only making rounds and rounds in those lanes there. Beautiful lanes that actually go on getting smaller and smaller. I mean, as you get in, width kam hote jayega, kam hota jayega. No, as you are getting in. And there will be places where a man has to go like this. People like me to khair. Difficult. This one. हाँ जी गए थे ग्रेट थैंक यू सो मच हमारे यहाँ भी आ जाना गोलकोंडा इट मे नॉट बी सो ब्यूटिफुल लाइक दिस बट देन आपको कुछ और बताना है ठहरिए या दिस वन ये भी गए होंगे those are all sandstone. So next tourism list you will have to change, sir. ठीक है? Bungee jump and all that is fine. पहले ये देख लो. Temple tourism. Madurai. See? As you go down south, you see colorful structures. There's so much of vibrance there. And look at the population. Huge numbers on the temple, the gods, and on the floor also. Number of gods are competing with the number of people out there. Monastery out there. I am not imposing temples on you. I was only trying to showcase different kinds of monumental structures that are actually under the preservation of Archaeological Survey of India. ये तो मेरा favorite है. That is my own favorite actually. देखो. This is playing mischief with me. Yeah. Very beautiful. It's not a small archaeological wonder. People can easily make out looking at it, right? Not simply down south, people on the other side of the Vindhyas and the other parts of the world also. Now waiting for Saho to do its magic with the same man. That is the city. Now we are actually taking you to, so that's a small journey. Nevertheless, I want you to look at different functions being taken up by Archaeological Survey of India. UPSC also from time to time announces posts for various positions in ASI. One of the students the other day has mentioned it, that he got a posting as an assistant archaeologist there. Glance through, those are the functions, sir. Surveying the archaeological remains, maintaining them, maintaining, conserving monuments, chemical preservation, then survey of temples, secular buildings also, establishing, running museums, epigraphic research, numismatic studies, expeditions and training in archaeology. So many things Archaeological Survey of India does. So for an odd question like functions of Archaeological Survey of India, that comes. Make a quick scribbling there so that we go to talk about meaning of archaeology and various other terms. By the way, did you open that book, Archaeology? Archaeological Anthropology. You got the book, right? Yeah, good. This was from the archives of ASI itself. Can I go, sir? Acha. 2018 question paper, page number 8. I am actually not looking into the whole lot of fossils and everything, but then आप देखिएगा, fossil evidence and lithic ages put together, 2018, relevance of anthropology एक रहने दें, but if at all I am removing that, it was about 80 marks for which fossils and archaeology were asked in the first paper. Explain the impact of discovery of iron technology on contemporary society, describe the principles of radiocarbon dating, describe the culture related to Homo erectus, then give an account of consequences of food production of Neolithic, and then explain biological changes that made human beings capable of making culture. So everything put together about 80 marks. Out of these fossils also, I mean, if at all I am removing the fossils, जैसा कि Homo erectus है, and then biological changes, if I am removing that, so I think it should come about 50 marks from archaeology itself. In the same year, in paper 2, that is page number 29, archaeology was reigning that year, 2018. And you can see there, town planning of Harappa, ethnoarchaeology, contributions of tribal cultures to Indian civilization, Siva Pithecus, Mesolithic in India. So those were the 5 questions, and that was making to about 75 marks. So 75 plus 80 out there. So you have 155 out of 500. I mean, no fool would actually be leaving archaeology and going to the exam. That speaks volumes. I need not have to say more on that. But then, when compared to the previous kind of questions, now the length of questions has come down. Previously, we used to have 60 markers, no? आराम से लिख लेते थे. How much ever you would want to write, दिल से लिखते थे. अभी थोड़ा सा you'll have to be. So back home, you look into Archaeological Survey of India. Actually speaking, in the Ministry of Culture, you have a primary web page in the Ministry of Culture. But otherwise, every circle is maintaining their own websites. जैसा कि चेन्नई circle है, शिलोंग circle है, दिल्ली and Kolkata, etc. They are maintaining their own websites. Competition चल रहा है. Different regions are in competition to one another. कौन कितना खुदाई कर रहा है, kind of. So everybody is busy digging. Madras Circle has been actively working in Golconda. Last year also good number of discoveries have come. अच्छा, आप अपना syllabus देखिएगा. These are actually some of the basic places where you find archaeology. I'm so sorry for that color choice. I was slightly. Not that they are unimportant, they are more important actually. Archaeological anthropology, that is generally meaning and scope. 1.8, dating kiya hoga? I asked you to read and come before you come to the class today. Yeah, how many of us dated? 1, 2, no, 3, very good. Only women, huh? Not the men out there. Cultural evolution, Paleolithic. When I have written in that color, what I meant was Paleolithic, Meso, Neo, and Chalco. All those 4 we will be doing from both India and world perspective. Whereas when you come to Copper Bronze Age, we will be largely sticking to Indus Valley alone. And even in the case of Iron Age cultures, we will stick to India alone. So as we get into the metal ages, the scope of our questions in the exam is narrowed to India. ठीक है? Bhattacharya is something that we strongly recommend, though a laborious book. Ember is entertaining. Pictures are there, global examples are there. So you can actually keep looking into the pictures and spend time. I generally recommend Rami Reddy books, prehistory and then Neolithic, post-Neolithic, for my own regionalism. And of course, his credibility of work. Professor was there in Hyderabad Central University in the Department of Archaeology, Anthropology. And Ember's dictionary, कोई ना कोई dictionary तो पढ़ना ही है मतलब, because there's so many terms are there, so we don't recommend Oxford, etc. We have our own brand, so we recommend Taylor's dictionary. Archaeological field methods. This is one question specifically I'm expecting this year, archaeological field methods. And that is the book there, William Dancy. The formula is very simple, sir. Whether we are reading the books or not, names of the books should be known to us. No? For the exhibition purpose. So for sure, if any friend is asking you what books you are referring, show all of them in the list. Sare batana. I'll also give you the gist so that रोब झाड़ सकते हो कि हाँ मुझे पता है बुक में क्या है, सारा कुछ पढ़ लिया मैंने. As I was saying, Ember gives global references. Most of the references are from Europe. He's an authority in European anthropology, European archaeology. And wherever fossil evidences are combining with archaeology, meaning in African continent, he's trying to give his own personal fieldwork also. And so, out of all these books, Ember's book is the most widely read across the world for the kind of quality, for the kind of authenticity. You have the other ones, Bhattacharya, as the name suggests, Indian prehistory. See, whenever we are trying to summarize on any archaeological related information, we depend on Bhattacharya. Because Bhattacharya himself had worked in difficult terrains. We have a very interesting question that was repeated in the exam on something called Soan Valley. Soan Valley or Soan Valley, both the spellings people use. Soan Valley, adjacent to the Jhelum River. That is one of the very prestigious places of archaeology for Indian subcontinent. If at all India cries of anything that we have missed on the other side of the border, is the Soan Valley. And of course, we have the Harappan site that we have missed out. The entire Indian civilization, we bank it on the identity of Harappa, and we lost it to the other side of the border. And the kind of dilapidated stage in which the Harappan sites are maintained, they are a true competition for the way we maintain our own archaeological structures. No, in fact, we are much better than the way they actually maintain. You go to the city of Harappa, you see, we call it town rather, very small by-lanes that actually take to the Harappan site. It's like you are going to the archaeological ages only. When you enter the lane, you feel that you are entering the archaeological times. But then the kind of maintenance, ill maintenance, that doesn't qualify the kind of mileage that we give to the entire subcontinent of India. You have the other. And of course, when I'm saying this, Bhattacharya was actually working in that Himalayan region along with the Harappa and all that stretch there. He was an expert in trying to link references from across different strata. See, the principle in archaeology, as I must have said earlier, is the lower the remnant is, the older it is. The lower the strata is, the more ancient it is. But then, if at all there is a stretch that is exposed to river water erosion, so the sequence would be reversed when you go to the lower parts of, lower ends of the river. And that is where he is an authority. Along the river stretches he had worked to see how the reversal is happening and trying to date accordingly. He was the one who was actually trained in the French country in their own archaeological methods, because in France this is actually a very well-established way of studying archaeology. They are experts in tracing archaeological facts along the river basins. Along with the erosion, along with shifting of layers, they actually study. When he was working in the Himalayan region, that is also a region exposed to good level of tectonic disturbances. And this man also worked in volcanic eruption related areas where absolute dating methods was a very important work. Radioactive dating, potassium argon dating. This man had actually personally exposed various fossils to such kind of techniques. So he's a real authority, not simply a writer of a book, but from his own experience he is writing. So in India, right now, if at all, we recommend any particular book for reference, that is Bhattacharya. You have Ramireddy and Ramireddy's book, both of them there. They are actually the books that have given references mostly from southern part of India. And his books prove to us that the Deccan Paleolithic or Deccan Lithic ages are very much different from the lithic ages of elsewhere in the country. So wherever we go in our classes, in all the topics, we are going to divide the country into some significant regions. One would be the Deccan region, the other would be east and northeastern region, meaning including Odisha, you have Bengal and the whole lot of northeastern region. You have the western segment there, Gujarat, Rajasthan and all that segment, and you have the northern part of India. And in northern part you have one, that is the Himalayan region, then you have the river basin areas. So these are the major regions that we are going to consider in all those lithic ages. And we are going to see that every region has got its own USPs. And out of all these regions, the two regions that are especially focused on, one is the eastern and northeastern region, the second one is the peninsular region. We are going to see, as we go into the future classes, we would see how strong the northeastern lithic ages was. There was one archaeologist by name Krishnaswamy, a question was asked on him. Krishnaswamy, who had worked in that part of the country. We will see how archaeology and anthropology are linked to one another. On that we would take a note. First problem people might witness is the spelling itself. You must have tried to cross-check when you are writing the definition, the spelling of archaeology. And based on which kind of book you are referring, the spelling might vary. But stick to one. Generally, we follow the British English, so archaeology, AE, unnecessary letters more. In the British English, we see many letters that are silent, many letters that are more than necessarily used. Americans are actually people who are more practical, more rational for that matter. This is playing with me today. If at all you have got your archaeological anthropology book, you kindly open that for me. I have given the branches of anthropology there in your booklet. And in the beginning there are some write-ups such as archaeology as a science, एक और लास्ट वाला भी बुक है, डैंसी वाला, फील्ड वर्क मेथड्स. We will try to identify some. Because when it comes to applications part, more than anybody else, archaeologists try to use a lot of mathematics. That is a basic definition, that archaeology is the study of human cultures through the recovery, documentation, analysis of material remains, including architecture, artifacts, biofacts, human remains, and landscapes. What we have seen in the Suketi was the landscape. We are trying to look at this question right now, concept of culture in archaeology. Elsewhere also we have discussed concept of culture. If at all the question is simply concept of culture, don't worry about archaeology. The problem is, even if it is an archaeology-based question or socio-cultural anthropology-based question, both of them you will get in the first section of paper 1. In spite of that, you don't get confused, because if the question is simply concept of culture, you are going to discuss how various thinkers in socio-cultural anthropology have described culture. Unless otherwise, the naming is as such, that is concept of culture in archaeology. That is where I am trying to take you right now. We will have a brief explanation and then less than a brief writing there. Sir, there are several disciplines that come to coincide with, intersect with something called archaeology. I must have made this reference in the earlier classes also. That the group of archaeologists, if at all, there are conferences, there are meetings of anthropologists, different branches included there. Archaeologists always try to maintain their own separate identity, because they feel that they are much more superior to anybody else. They feel that they are the technical people, they feel that they do the real field work. Whereas the socio-cultural anthropologists might be, indulging with the living people, trying to get information from them. Archaeologists are trying to get information from the dead people. So they, through some material, are trying to extract information related to the dead souls. So they are much more superior when compared to the people who are studying the living individuals. See, when it comes to culture, archaeologically, as your book mentions, as I have given in your booklet, different branches, we try to give something like, historic archaeology, proto-historic archaeology, and prehistoric archaeology. And when we look at the questions in the archaeology segment in this subject for that matter, most of the questions are from prehistoric archaeology. Very few, occasionally, like how we got one from Indus civilization, that is proto-historic archaeology. Historic archaeology we are not really bothered about. From historic archaeology, we have got a very rare question, that is iron, how the discovery of iron has changed the contemporary cultures. That is the question that we have got. I mean, that's a rarity, Historic archaeology rarely occurs in our exam. So, most of the departments of archaeology are focusing on prehistoric archaeology. I have to say here that it is the American archaeology that considers, American anthropology that considers archaeology as a part of anthropology. Though we must have made a reference of this earlier, it is more apt to say here that when it comes to American anthropology, they consider archaeology as a part of anthropology itself. On the other hand, the British anthropology considers archaeology as a different discipline, but then there are intersecting points. I hope you are there. Meaning, for people like American anthropologists, study of culture was the central theme of both archaeological anthropology and anthropology of any genre for that matter. If at all a question occurs, anthropology versus archaeology, we will be actually trying to highlight both the American way of doing things and the British way of looking at things. For the Britons, archaeology and anthropology are distinct from one another. Archaeology and anthropology are distinct from one another. Nevertheless, they maintain some kind of a connectivity between them. Maybe the one that is intersecting is nothing but archaeological anthropology for them. On the other hand, for the Americans, anthropology within its scope has archaeology. So for both of them, so there are other branches, of course, you have several other things. For all these, the central theme is culture. Where they differ probably is how they are trying to conclude on culture, or what is the mechanism through which they study culture. So for that matter, for the scholars other than archaeologists in that realm for that matter, we can see that they study culture as the way people behave in the context of maybe how you are interacting with one another, how you are choosing your mate, how your culture groups are organized, how maybe you are exchanging the commodities. So when I'm saying all this, the human behavior, how you examine human behavior through the interactions, through the social structures. This is how the schools other than archaeological anthropology take up cultural studies, which I do not want to dwell more into right now. We have already done. When it comes to archaeology or archaeological anthropology, the study of culture is through the material remains. The study of culture is through the material remains. And they believe that material is the result of the human behavior. Material is the result of human. You're all there, sir? You're all there? Huh? Padukoddu bangaram. Because we have to study the ones that are non-existing, that were there ages ago. You have to write the stories from the lifeless stones. So you will have to be more than alert. Always remember, sir, I'm sure you'll remember this. Whenever you feel like sleeping, you remember how much you have paid. Per class, how much you must have paid. You will not sleep after that. Not simply in this Janma, but the next Janma also. I didn't aim at anybody. Generally, I'm saying, because climate is such now. मुझे ना कभी-कभी लगता है बच्चों के साथ मैं भी सो जाऊं क्लास में. Like how we used to have in the school sleeping class होता था ना. वैसे तो हर क्लास में सोते ही हैं, but then dedicated class for sleeping. बच्चे भी सो रहे, टीचर भी सो रहे, सब खराटों की आवाज बाहर तक आ रही है, kind of. अच्छा लगता है मिलजुल के सोना, kind of. So not in this class. Are you there? Can I talk? So my job will be done when, while you are walking on the street, if you find a stone, you pick up and try to examine how it is. Then my task is done. You are archaeologist in the making. No stone you'll leave unturned. You'll pick up every stone to examine. Maybe possibly this was something related to the primitive man. So, archaeological anthropologists are those people who try to narrate culture from the material. They believe that material is the result of the human behavior. And these are the people who believe that the tool, existence of the tool, ability of man to make and use the tool makes him different from rest of the people, rest of the biological entities. Meaning, for archaeologists, culture is nothing but the ability to make and use the tools. And that is where humans are special individuals. They strongly believe that humans alone have culture. And of course, we have these arguments in the discipline. Is culture unique to humans? Comment. For archaeologists, making and using of tools is culture. For maybe the socio-cultural anthropologist, the way you organize. When behavior of the individuals is controlled by social mechanism, that is the existence of culture. Behavioral aspects of individual are controlled by some mechanism or the other. So if at all we see the chimpanzee society, chimpanzees have a society, gorillas have a society. In the chimpanzee society, in the penguin society, we see that there are certain rules they make. You're supposed to follow those rules, meaning that they also have some kind of a culture. It's a different story that we call them individuals inferior, species inferior to the humans. We try to restrict culture to our own selves. That's where we try to project ourselves as anthropocentric. That is a much higher, much more poisonous than being ethnocentric. I said so much. Ardhamaite, okay. Even if you don't understand, it's okay. I'll show you something. This I didn't plan for today, but I thought. So what we are going to do in these lectures is, we will see how the genus Homo had started to use tools, make tools. Our inquiry will be two ways. One is biologically who was doing, how he was able to do. Secondly, when it comes to the material, culturally, when it comes to the material culture, how the Homo sapiens and the individuals earlier to Homo sapiens were trying to evolve through making of the tools. That's where we are going to answer questions like evolution of tools in the Paleolithic ages, or evolution of tool typology from lower Paleolithic to Mesolithic. So we would see how the transition was happening. But before that, I'll try to show something.
Homo daqui. కత్తులతో కాదురా, కంటి చూపుతో చంపేస్తా.
Anthropologists and archaeologists are explorers of human culture. Their work is closely connected. Both careers focus on the way people live together. Anthropologists study the origin of humans and their physical, social, and cultural development. They are concerned with how the past relates to the present. They also conduct research by going to locations to ask questions and make observations. An archaeologist is a kind of anthropologist. Archaeologists study past societies through their material remains. They recover and examine material evidence, such as ruins, tools, and pottery remaining from past human cultures. With this evidence, they build an understanding of the history, customs, and living habits of earlier civilizations. Archaeologists often travel to sites called digs, where they search for remnants of societies. Together, they create a picture of a society. We often think of anthropology and archaeology in terms of the past, unearthing the secrets of ancient civilizations. But these scientists also examine living societies in faraway Amazon jungles or in a neighborhood next door. They might study gender differences, physical attributes, music, or religion. Their field is the wide array of human social experience. Usually their work is sponsored by a museum, university, or foundation, but they might also be independent filmmakers or authors. Most anthropologists and archaeologists prepare for their careers with a 4-year college program followed by extensive graduate-level study. For many professional positions, especially with universities, a PhD is required. These are academic fields that combine curiosity and attention to detail with a taste for adventure.
That actually you can use for a personal note also. As it is, you can take from there what are the, what is the scope of an archaeologist. Sir, we were actually talking about this concept of culture in archaeology. So I was saying that when it comes to archaeologists, they are mostly trying to understand culture from the material aspects, and that is where we see a variety of branches coming up in archaeology. I tried to incorporate several varieties out there, like classical archaeology, and then you have historic archaeology, museum archaeology. You can actually go through that in your booklet. Nevertheless, छोटा सा note लिखिएगा, concept of culture in archaeology. Concept of culture in archaeology. Based on American way of understanding archaeology and anthropology, archaeology is considered to be a component within anthropology. Both of them share the concept of culture. For archaeology, material forms the crux of study. American archaeological anthropology believes that culture, which shall be studied from the material aspects, is the result of human behavior. Such behavior is guided by shared expectations, and patterned outputs of products. Repeated performance of certain activities by members of a culture group produces tangible physical impact on the natural world. Archaeologists try to understand the intellectual capability of the people in relation to their environment through the tools they produced. They study the artifacts and assemblages of artifacts to draw a wider picture of the people who inhabited those regions. The goal of archaeology is to explain the long-term human prehistory, history, and cultural evolution. It is the discipline that possesses the method and theory for the collection and interpretation of information about the pre-written human past. It can also make a critical contribution to the understanding of documented societies. Archaeologists are categorized into historic archaeologists, those who reconstruct the cultures of people who produced written records, and those who were the theme of study in the historical documents. Secondly, prehistoric archaeologists. They study human record of cultures that existed before the origin of writing. Said this is a popular categorization. We have physical, sociocultural, and archaeological. Archaeology is the theme now. We have three there: prehistoric, protohistoric, and historical archaeology. Prehistory is Stone Age, Bronze Age. Actually speaking, from Bronze Age itself, people try to put it in proto-history. If at all you see archaeological Indian Society of Archaeology, we find there that prehistory includes Bronze and early Iron Age also. So that is a niche area basically. So for your examination purpose, what I strongly recommend is, in the prehistory you try to write only till Bronze Age, but in the proto-history you also write Bronze Age and early Iron Age. ठीक है? Historical archaeology, we are less concerned. Stone Age, you have beautiful list: Paleolithic, Meso and Neolithic, even Chalcolithic. The ones where written records are there. If at all one must be wondering about proto-history, sir, prehistory is where there is no written record. Proto-history is written record is there, but you do not know what they have written. It is like our handwriting. Many times we write, our writings are proto-historic. And historic are there, where written records are there, you know the meaning of them, you have deciphered them. Right now. The above is a temporal categorization. Of scope of archaeology. Which more or less on the same lines is found across different regions. One can witness broad trends in the types of tools found in different cultures or cultural ages, in different cultural ages. Region specifically, based on the geology, variations occur in the material used for tools. And based on every region's technical skill, the size and shape of specific tools get altered. In the three principal archaeological zones of the world, namely Africa, Eurasia, and Americas, timeline differences are found, especially from the late prehistoric times. On the other hand, based on content of study, archaeology is currently categorized into, those are the branches: historical archaeology, maritime archaeology, etc. You can read this on page 19 of your book, Archaeological Anthropology. Page 19, where a briefing is given on each of them. Forensic archaeology, urban archaeology, osteology, environmental archaeology, and pheniciology. Pheniciology is that branch that is restricted to the archaeological studies of the regions near to Greece, islands of Crete, etc. We also have our own regional archaeology, we call it Indian archaeology. When they can call something as pheniciology, we should also use our own title. As you write, let me say this: when it comes to India, archaeology was one of the neglected areas for the want of funds, rather. See, there was a time when Archaeological Survey of India was established due to the services of James Prinsep, or maybe even with the work of William Jones. We see that it was those decades when huge amount of funds were used by the British rulers to establish and to do the research, etc. Post-independent times, we don't see so much of funds coming up. We have two branches that are highly neglected. One is physical anthropology, the other is archaeological anthropology. But of course, these days we don't see a proper demarcation of the work of physical anthropology, because it is merging with several other scientific genres, whether you say study of genetics or you say forensic studies. So you have specific branches within physical anthropology trying to make their own name, make their own way. So, in bits and pieces we see physical anthropology flourishing, but when it comes to archaeology, it is still struggling. Many times it is a self-sponsored thing. We have organizations like Wiley sponsoring archaeologists. So, that's, and getting funds is also a very difficult task. Even before we try to dig and try to protect, most of the archaeological remains would have lost to time. That's how things are. Okay, sir. Now, let us begin with some small terms. Then I will take you to the basic definitions of the lithic ages, the timeline, etc. I will here would want to begin with this term called Eolith versus something called Clactonian tool. Eolith, heard of this word anytime? Lith is fine. I mean, lithic is something to do with stone. So many times the problem is, even if you are digging an archaeological site, whether the stone was used as a tool or not, that is a puzzle. Man of the time will not come alive and tell you that, see, I have used this, I have produced this in this way. I wish we could do that with the kind of time machine. We could call him, or we should go to him, talk to him. The job of archaeologist would become so very easy. You can even carry some sample across time and come back so that you can preserve in your museum. But because that is not possible now, the archaeologist survives based on his own acumen of making a very rational, a scientific guess. Now, eolith are accidental tools. Eolith is nothing but accidental tool. There is no confirmation that this must have been something that was used as a tool by the man of the time. Eolith is an unconfirmed tool. When I am saying unconfirmed tool, it may or may not be used as a tool. It might accidentally resemble to be a tool. Clactonian is intentional tool. You can confirm the intention, the production, possibly production with an intent. If these two terms are clear, when we go into the details, we will be able to use them very, 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 very liberally. I will show you some pictures, then we will try going to the ages, lithic ages. So the problem is, when you walk on the road, when you find some stone, whether that is an eolith or a Clactonian tool, that is the problem. Next time when you go to a museum, you try to figure out something like this. I mean, these titles you must have used in your classes, in your history, etc. The left-hand side is a hand axe, the other is a cleaver. In spite of the fact that we are showing, you may not be able to make out, because one looks to be a long and thin one. The other looks to be different in color, and because it's not even a two-dimensional one. Unless otherwise you see that in the 3 dimensions or 4 dimensions, you'll not be able to make out what might be the use of it, etc. But then I think the terms are pretty commonly used in your history. One we call cleaver, the other is hand axe. I'm only trying to show some pictures so that, this I think is much better to understand. Left hand side is hand axe, the right hand side is cleaver. Acha, based on whatever basic understanding you had from history, can you say apart these two? Can you tell me what a hand axe is and what a cleaver is? A hand axe and a cleaver. Hand axe ante chetto vadedi. Hand axe and a cleaver. Because we know axe of that kind, you have seen Bahubali's axes there. The kind of those typical hand axes that we use, and even now we have hand axes. These days people are using very liberally to chop off the heads of. Yesterday some news was there, somewhere from Vijayawada, there was some news. Husband was so very whatever by the wife, and he ventured into chopping off her head and exhibiting the head in the very public. And people tried to question him. He threw off the head somewhere in the Nala there and then went and such kind of psychopaths. I don't know what we are doing, what kind of populations we are living with, the kind of psychiatric treatments that are required, not to the individuals, but to the complete society as a whole. I really wonder how the future generations will be. Just because there are less number of likes in the Facebook, people are committing suicides. And just because a husband did not give enough number of likes and comments on some XYZ social media, the lady has applied for a divorce. So now the expectation is that the lovemaking has to be in public, not in private. The social media should actually be witness to the amount of love that you have towards each other. I do not know. So this is what is the hand axe, Parasurama's hand axe I call it. This is a typical Parasurama's hand axe. But then in that hand axe we see that this is most often made with a wood. अभी तो खैर ये भी metal से बना रहे, metal इतना ज़्यादा हो गया कि there is no wood anywhere, so you are substituting wood with metal. And this one, very beautiful sharpening of the tool. Archaeologically we call it retouching. So man had touched it and retouched, in the sense that you are making it so very beautiful. You're making it so very beautiful there. I'll show you some. You know this? You know that? घर में है शायद ना मसाला, जो मसाला बनता है. Similar kind of stones were used to sharpen the tools at one point of time. अभी भी करते हैं ना, घर में कभी नाइफ थोड़ा सा वो हो जाता है तो आप ढूंढते हो कहीं कुछ पत्थर हो, कुछ नहीं तो जाके अपने मियाँ पे घस लो. Kind of पत्थर ही है और क्या. Because he doesn't get moved by anything. So कम से कम छुरे से तो हिले थोड़ा सा. Kind of. I didn't do that any time, so don't worry. He's safe in my hands. Come across something like that? Heard of something like this? This is one of the tools, sir, in the Neolithic cultural age. अच्छा, हिस्ट्री में जो पढ़ा होगा उसको याद करो. नियोलिथिक टाइम में कुछ टूल था, कुछ तो होगा. whatever. उसमें ये भी था. Looks to be a proper tenicoid. है ना? Tenicoid की तरह ही है ना? But then so smooth. And just imagine how man of that time must have made these tools. Smooth tool, and then the kind of shape that he had given to it, called ringstone. Ringstones or mice heads as we call. Even now they are in use. Go to Nagaland, go to Shillong, you find in the museums there. They have actually the practice of making boats, canoes. Canoes are made from the tree trunks. Tree trunks. You must have traveled, some of you who must be living in the river basin areas, no, long boats are there, where you are trying to carve out the extra material from the trunk, big trunks, tree trunks. And then how you would be doing? You would use this as a sling stone rather. You would try to tie it to the rope and then try to give a beating to the tree so that the wooden material is getting loosened. Then you are trying to scoop the material. And then you nicely, make it a smooth one. Then you arrange some kind of a reapers so that it becomes a long kind of a boat to travel. This is one such kind. We would be seeing some such tools. Let me give you some broad time periods. My idea is to primarily expose you to certain terms today. These are the terms that we are going to come across. Geologically, there are certain terms we use called the eras, epochs, periods. Era, periods, and epochs. Though we didn't have questions on geological time earlier, but I thought I would be providing you some write-up on geological time. See, most often in anthropology, we are concerned with people just close to us. Just close to us. Meaning, maybe perhaps the Homo sapiens with some other Homo individuals. Or maybe a little backward if I go, the whole lot of Homo and somebody who was just next to us, somebody called Astrollo, who was also trying to stand on both the feet. And more inclined people can go a little backward and try to compare the humans with the big apes, the living apes that are existing today in different parts of the world. So most of our study is confined to this. Many times, if at all you are trying to study culture, you would be starting with Homo alone. Because Homo is considered to be that genus which has the capability of producing culture. Are you there, sir? So most often we are restricted to them. I'm not giving you the whole lot of other terminologies right now. I am sticking to the culture related terms. Let me give you some basic definitions of them. Epochs are the smallest units. We will see the time periods also. I'm using the word period very loosely here. We will also see the timeline. So epochs are the smallest units. Periods are intermittent to the epochs, and what we call much bigger one called eons. If I give you the proper timeline, it will be much more easier for you to remember. Epoch is the smallest one. Next you have the period. In terms of numbers, if we see, that will be much more easier to remember. These numbers, etc., we give so that you will have some clue about which time we are talking about. Not that from the exam point of view there will be questions on that. There you go. Several periods put together, we call them eras. Several eras put together becomes the eon. Sir, I am trying to give you some here. eras, epochs and periods. ठीक है? We are actually, I'll show you much bigger picture. Just hold on. Just look at this. You need not have to remember this whole thing. Look at the top one there. We are worried about his arrival. We are worried about his arrival. How many million years ago this must have happened? When I say humans, I am not talking about Homo sapiens. I am only talking about genus Homo. Genus Homo must have originated at about 1.6 to maybe 2 million years ago. So most of our discussion in the class is restricted to that time alone. But look at the whole thing. As a biologist, you might be talking about evolution of various other things, how vertebrates must have come, how various other people must have come. But for our conversation, we are restricting ourselves to that 2 million years ago. Or even if I would want to present some kind of an explanation related to the other individual called Astrolo, I might be going to not more than about 6 million years ago. Many times, people who do not know the meaning of anthropology, they think that anthropology studies dinosaurs. But we are not studying dinosaurs. They got extinct. We are trying to study the living individuals and the people who are linked to these living individuals. We are studying humans, not dinosaurs. And we actually are concerned only about the Cenozoic era, the one that is visible today. That zoological age which is visible today is called Cenozoic. And within that Cenozoic era, we are actually concerned about, if I'm going from, that's what is the major concern for us. Humans in the Homo sapiens form have originated there in the Holocene epoch. When I said epoch is the smallest element of time, it is the smallest element of time. That is the time where epochs are those timelines where we see the emergence of newer species originating. Holocene is that time where humans have originated. And the relatives of the humans have originated a little earlier to that. Pleisto is the earliest of the Cenozoic. So we see that we try to linger around that particular time period. Because every time the question that might come to your mind is, what is the timeline of study that we are trying to study? We would be restricting most often to this 2 million years for the arrival of Homo and Homo sapiens. And when it comes to Astrolo, it may be the 6 million years. I am actually this year trying to say 6 million years. If at all somebody was asking maybe 1.5 years ago, we were saying that we would cover up to 5 million years ago only. But then down in 2017, some kind of discoveries have happened where we found Astrolo fossils belonging to a little earlier to 6 million years ago. That is where we are trying to now establish in this discipline that humans, the ancestors of humans, tried to stand erect right from maybe 6 million years ago. Nevertheless, you have, if you look at your paper too, there are some people mentioned there called Sivapithecus and Ramapithecus. Whenever we are using this word Pithecus, Pithecus is nothing but ape individuals. Pithecus are nothing but the ape individuals. These were those species that were existing somewhere by 14 to 18 million years ago. India boasts of having the evidence of somebody who lived at 18 million years ago. We have added those topics in the syllabus in paper 2 in order to cover whatever we are existing, whatever we are having in our fossil evidences. If at all we had n number of Homo evidences, we would have been happy talking about them. But because we don't have many, we are trying to take back the syllabus into those times where we have evidences. I have added in your booklet, towards the end of that booklet, I tried to add in Indian archaeology, Homo sapiens evidences. You can back home try looking at that. I'm worried right now about various lithic ages. So cultural evolution is something that we are trying to look at. When we go to the human fossil evidences, we would try to look at all the other people. So that is the chronology of the lithic cultures. You have to remember those times, 2 million years to 105,000 years is the lower Paleolithic. But if at all you see the Paleolithic, that's a huge time, 2 million years to 10,000 years. So all the time man was trying to depend on what we call Stone Age cultures. But among them, as you are going up, the time gets narrowed. Upper Paleolithic hardly remaining for about 30,000 years. What we mostly try to do, according to your syllabus, is how the tool typologies and technologies have evolved as we move from lower Paleolithic to the Iron Age cultures. What we will be doing is, we will try to identify certain general trends about each of the cultural age. When I say general trends, we are mostly basing our conclusions on European and African lithic ages. So general trends. And when we talk about general trends, we will also try to see how different they are in the Indian context. So the way we would be studying is, we will start with the, for example, if I'm starting with Paleolithic, I would try to explain what lower Paleolithic is, what are the general characteristics, what man did and how he lived. We try to identify some thing of this kind. I mean, these are the things that should be a part of your answer. Suppose he says lower Paleolithic cultures. Simply he says in the paper 1, lower Paleolithic cultures. What you should be knowing is, what is the timeline, who discovered, where they have discovered, what were the tools, the materials used, some of the important global sites. If at all Indian specific question is there, India sites, and how man lived, what kind of habitations, whether in the caves, whether on the hilltops, whether he built something. So if building of the habitational sites means culture, culture is not unique to humans. If building your habitational site is called culture, man is not the only individual to have culture. Yes or no? है ना? हाँ, ऐसे देख रहे जैसे पहली बार सुन रहे हो. Yesterday my son was answering that question. What are the animals that build their own houses? I don't know. That's the first grade question. And then they were asking him to draw a dreamtime house of himself. I mean, his own dream house. His own dream house. He had drawn a house. Big one with a Tata Sky at the top. So, a big one, Tata Sky at the top. And series of windows. Windows, bade sare windows. And then he says, no door. For my house there will not be a door. He had a logic also for that. These are certain general things. पहले इसको लें, फिर बात करेंगे. General features. What I tried to give there was time, tools, material, who was the biological man of the time. We are starting from the bottom, Paleolithic, 2 million years ago to 105,000 years ago. That is the overall Paleolithic time, the lower Paleolithic time, 2 million years ago to 105,000. Interesting names: crude hand axes, choppers, chopping tools. The terms themselves look so violent. Chopper, chopping tool. I don't know what you're trying to chop. Khalli bakrid hui thi to pata nahi. So you give me a time of 3-4 days, in between which I will try to finish the evaluation of your papers, then we will have a discussion of your paper. Let me see how you have entertained me. Material-wise, there's a difference. Quartzite and metamorphic in India. Sedimentary quartzite in Europe. Biological man was Homo erectus. I must have given you a basic phylogenetic picture, right? From Astrolo to, where some gaps we have put, saying that those are the puzzles. Middle Paleolithic from 105,000s to 40,000s. Flakes, flake tools, fine hand axes. Material is as such. Biological man was Neanderthal. Upper Paleolithic, blade tools, fluting tools, bone tools, cave art, Cro-Magnon. इतने धीरे लिखोगे तो we'll move from lithic ages to the iron age. One trend we find is there was a movement from crude, unsophisticated tools to maybe fine tools, smaller tools, definite tools. Maybe perhaps we have moved from Eolithic tools to Clactonian tools. We were moving from stone tools to non-stone material. The non-stone may be bone tools. They may be, when we go to the later stages, we see the arrival of metal there, Mesolithic. Mesolithic, mostly the blade tools. Certain techniques we were trying to mention. We will also have a discussion about the techniques. Here what we have written is pressure flaking, indirect flaking. So by that time early Homo sapiens had already come. Upper Paleolithic was the time when Cro-Magnon emerged. Cro-Magnon is also termed as early Homo sapiens. Neolithic, shouldered tools, or we call them celts. We have to make pictures of each of them. Grinding and polishing tools. It would take one more class to get to make you comfortable with the stuff. Sir, the kind of, can I talk? The kind of questions that we can get in the exam ask you the general features of any specific cultural age. So it may be like, lower Paleolithic or Mesolithic. He might ask you general features. And if the question is in paper 1, your answer is specific to the world. Maybe perhaps based on the availability of space and you would want to showcase your knowledge, you might incorporate India somewhere. It may also be a question based on trends. Trends in tool typology and technology. Trends in tool typology and technology. When he says trends, he might give a broader phase like Paleolithic. Trends in the tool typology and technology in the Paleolithic. When you say in the Paleolithic, you are trying to write from lower Paleolithic to upper Paleolithic. He may sometimes broaden the scope of the question. So from the lower Paleolithic to Mesolithic. So it depends on the length of the question. If it is a 25 marker, he might try to give you. And then sometimes the question is comparative in the sense that comparing India with the general global nature of the cultural ages. Comparing India with the general global nature of the cultural ages. Sometimes he may give you questions on specific technology. We will see various technologies. I've named a few here, though pressure flaking, etc., but the questions will be much more broader. This is one we are actually waiting for. And then there can be site-based questions. There can be booklet. There can be site-based questions. This is a trend in the paper 2 actually. For example, 2017, describe the salient features of Chalcolithic cultures of the Deccan. Deccan seems to be a bigger region, nevertheless, describing salient features of Chalcolithic cultures of Deccan. That was the 2017 question. 2017 also archaeology was making a good presence. I am looking at page 29. If you see page 29, 6 questions out there. So that was coming to about 80 marks. And then there was one, Neolithic cultures of South India. So the same year you see 2 questions coming from southern part of India. One was Chalcolithic cultures, the other was Neolithic cultures of South India. 2016, there is one very specific question. Sir, there's a spelling error, I'm so sorry. Significance of Mesolithic findings from Belen Valley. The typist had done his own correction, so sorry. Belen Valley. Significance of Mesolithic findings of Belen Valley. So Belen Valley, that was a special question. 2016 itself, delineate the salient characteristics of Narmada man and examine its phylogenetic significance. That's actually a fossil-based question. Look at South India, it rules. And then, 2016, another question there. Give a detailed appraisal of skeletal remains from Chalcolithic cultures of undivided Punjab. कभी कभी ऐसे करना अच्छा लगता है. Neighboring area also you are trying to pull into your own country, undivided Punjab, and claim the whole thing. कभी हो सकता है, no? This is how geography can also change. कभी सुबह उठते हैं मैप बड़ा लगने लगता है आपको, ना? न्यू इंडिया मैप नाउ काइंड ऑफ. बाकी इधर उधर से भी ला रहे, सिलोन से भी ला रहे, बांग्लादेश से भी ला रहे, पता नहीं कहाँ कहाँ से. And then 2015, sir, South Indian paleoliths. You have another question, region specific. Sivalik Hills, paleoanthropological fossil finds of Sivalik. As I'm going down from the 2014, Neolithic cultures of northeastern India. Neolithic cultures of northeastern India. Further down there, 2012, Sowan culture. And then you have Narmada man, because he's the only man that we have in India. So, Narmada man, kind of. So, site-based questions. एक और भी था जो अब थोड़ा सा पीछे जाओ तो दिखेगा, मतलब Burza home, that is one site from Kashmir that was in the exam. So we also will identify some of the sites for the current year as we get into those topics. So these are the kind of questions. And sir, when questions like site-based questions are there, you are supposed to give the maps, etc. And और एक भी है, individual-based questions. अभी इसके लिए थोड़ा सा, 2 people I am trying to identify. One is Iravati Karve. I must have made a mention of this earlier in the class, है ना? Iravati Karve, ये बहुत ही significant है. And then you have H.D. Sankalia. Sir, look at your booklet, archaeology booklet. In the later part, in Indian archaeology, I have given H.D. Sankalia, page 162, and N.K. Bose as an Indian archaeologist. N.K. Bose as an Indian. So H.D. Sankalia आप एक बार पढ़िएगा and then take it as an assignment, sir. Because it's very detailed one I have given here, but I want you to make a synopsis of that. 162. That it will be a question for about 10 or 15 marks. 162, 163. What I have to provide to you is Iravati Karve. Contributions of Iravati Karve. वो भी मतलब within 1-2 days I'll be providing them to you, so that so those are the broad list of questions. We always had a problem, sir, in India to fix this kind of a timeline. That is where there was a struggle. See, if H.D. Sankalia is considered to be very significant today, of course, you know, he used to dig a lot. I mean, he was there practically on the field every time. But apart from that, he took up this major responsibility of proving that India also had similar ages like how either Europe or Africa had. Nevertheless, I'll show you certain pictures which you will draw now. ठीक है? ज़्यादा tough है नहीं. Give me a minute. Once you finish drawing them, Make a freehand drawing. Don't use scales and all. यहाँ scales की ज़रूरत नहीं है, ठीक है? Lower Paleolithic. Those are all popular lower Paleolithic tools. पहले draw करना, बाद में बात करेंगे उनके बारे में. One, we said hand axes. I have drawn three kinds of hand axes there: Abivalian, Acheulean, and Chilean hand axes. Always remember, sir, hand axes are those which have narrow cutting edge, not like your Parasurama's hand axe. Parasurama's hand axe had got broader cutting edge, whereas these hand axes have a narrow cutting edge and the handle, which we call butt, is thicker. On the other hand, cleavers have broad cutting edge and a narrow butt. These are the other ones: chopping tools and choppers. Chopping tools have two sides there, two faces, which are used for grinding or chopping whatever. Chopper has got only one face that is used for chopping. Sometimes, archaeologists could conclude the purpose. Sometimes they couldn't conclude. Chopping tools are of that kind. Exact purpose we do not know. Cutting edges are always to be marked in your pictures. Names that I have given: Abivalian, Acheulean, and Chilean hand axes. They are based on the places where they were found in France. This is all basic stuff. Once we finish this, then we go into the details of each of the cultural age. Always in the exam, when you draw pictures, have a proper outline, something like a box, so that you're not wasting your space and you are able to separate your writing with the from the picture. Some scripts are so beautiful, some students even number the figures as they go from question number 1 to question number 8, figure 1, figure 2, etc. So by the time examiner finishes evaluating, he knows that you have drawn about 20-25 pictures. Sir, I am reading out hand axe, Abivalian, Acheulean, Chilean hand axe, cleaver. Down below is chopping tool on the left hand side. Chopping tool that is a bifacial tool. Both the faces are used for working. Chopper is a unifacial tool. May I? This is lower Paleolithic. Middle Paleolithic. By this time what happened? Sir, look at the general features chart that you have written. In the general features chart, lower Paleolithic hand axes, cleavers, and maybe chopping tools. By the time you come to Middle Paleolithic, you have flakes and fine hand axes. Now let me first tell you what a flake is for a brief idea. Tarvata adeyandi. Ippudu idanamata. Now you look at me. What was happening in the lower Paleolithic was, who was the man at that time? Who was the biological individual in lower Paleolithic? Homo erectus. Homo erectus, so he was able to walk and run and use his hands and all that stuff. You remember I have given you a site reference from China. Chaukodian. Right now I don't have. So Chaukodian, China. We find there that that was a Homo erectus site. And that was a site that had yielded huge number of mammoth tusks. Huge number of mammoth tusks. See, it cannot be an accident because those tusks were also arranged in a proper settlement fashion, meaning a house, the entire house was constructed with the walls with the tusks and then the ceiling also with the tusks. Such a huge wildlife wealth actually. If at all, any kind of a smuggler could catch hold of it, I mean, beautiful stuff out there. But then this one, it shows that it is a pure confirmation that an intentional hunting was happening at the time of Homo erectus. And we have to understand that such a huge animal like a mammoth, it cannot be actually hunted easily by an individual or two. It really must have required a community action there. A cooperative action was definitely necessary. And also that was a time not of any swords or whatever kinds. This was a time of lower Paleolithic when man must have used some kind of a huge stone. He must have chipped off some certain things. So he must have used two material. One was a tool material, this is a hammering material. You hammer and then some kind of a chipping occurs and maybe perhaps a sharpening of the tool happens, and this you use a huge one and then you try to throw at the animal from a distance. And for that to happen, you have to be really tall, you have to be really strong and energetic, and definitely it must not have been a game hunting by the women. So that was where the first gender specificity was discussed in archaeology. So this, all the people must have, all the men folks must have gathered, and then all of them using this kind of a sharp tool and trying to throw at the animal, and then seeing to it that the animal gets slain. And then, now when you're doing this, small chips were getting off. These were all which at a later point of time called flakes. These were the flakes. But in the lower Paleolithic, flakes were not intentional tools. They were accidentally there. Intentionally, you were only manufacturing tools like hand axes or cleavers, choppers, chopping tools. These all tools, we call them core tools. Core tools. In the process of manufacturing a core tool, accidental tools were emerging, which we call eoliths. Even if flakes were there in the lower Paleolithic flakes were eolithic, they were unintentional. But what happened was that by the time we came to the Middle Paleolithic, in the Middle Paleolithic, we see that flake tools become the core tools. Are you there? Flake tools are now manufactured intentionally. Previously in the lower Paleolithic, flake tools were accidental tools. In the Middle Paleolithic, flake tools were manufactured with a purpose, intentionally. And let me show something there. Look at this. This is from some museum there. Just notice, that is a stone. Okay? Stone you are trying to fix in a handle. And when you're trying to fix in a handle, you may actually use a rope to tie. Just have a look at this. This one. There's a handle there. This may be a handle where you are trying to use a rope and try to tie with a rope. And in this case, you are having a slot. You're trying to make a slot. The slot may be in wood. It may be in some kind of a bone. And into that you are trying to fix your flake tool. This whole lot of exercise we call hafting. Hafting is an exercise where flake tools are fixed to some kind of a handle so that you can use for specific purposes. Now look at this. You're trying to fix it. You can see the difference in the color here. This is the original stone color, and this is some kind of a gel you are trying to apply. Look at that. That is the gummy resin, which is still used in the Australian Aborigines who are trying to use such kind of tools. So what you do is you apply that kind of a resin, you try to either tie with a rope or trying to fix in some kind of a handle so that there's a proper grip. So you'll lay it just like that for a couple of days, 3-4 days, and then by the time it gets hardened, there it functions like a single tool, both the handle and the flake together. Now, you have the other ones there. Forget about this. This we will talk about. Scraper is that. Scraper, actually you can use it for scraping, or maybe you try to dress the hides, animal hides. You have hunted, so you have to clean. Cleaning can happen with a scraper. Or maybe you have something like a tree bark, which you may use for whatever purpose. Cleaning the tree barks, that is done with the scraper. That is a burin. Burin is something to draw holes. Like you see in the handle for hafting, you have to have some holes drawn. The holes are made with the burins. Yes. Clactonian or intentional. Core is the specific word that is used for the lower Paleolithic kind of tools. Yes, sort of. So you can actually see that it's something like this. It's something like this. So you have two edges, or maybe perhaps this is also sharpened. So you're holding like this. Or maybe perhaps it's something like a screwdriver. So these two are the sharpened edges, and you have a pointed edge here, so that you are actually trying to draw a hole. That's the reason why sometimes you should live in the wilderness, like how our Prime Minister did, so that you know how to use the Stone Age tools and all. పెళ్లి చేసుకోకపోతే ఇవే కష్టాలా చెప్పండి. Burin is nothing but a graver. It's a graving tool. It's an engraving tool. So you can use it for drawing holes. Sitting in 21st, 22nd century, these things may look to be very funny. But if at all you go back and see the path-breaking inventions list, a rope was of that kind. There was some book that I purchased as a 365 path-breaking inventions of the mankind. The very first one was this, hand axe. So anthropologists believe that there was a congestion, there was a competition on the trees. Some people will push it down. Sir, I read out, there are two things, sir. One is point, the other is borer. Point could be something like a thick needle. You understand needle, right? Modern needle. So point may be something like this. You have a sharpened point there. So you are actually trying to throw. That's how you could fish, rather. So initially maybe it was hand fishing was happening. No? You're trying to do with that hand, bare hands fishing. And then maybe perhaps a man must have used some kind of intoxicating weeds. So ponds are there, so you try to put those weeds, intoxicating ones, in the water so that the fish would come floating up, and then jolly good you have picked them up and then put them aside and do whatever you want with them. And then perhaps maybe this had come later. No? You're trying to put it there. That was a point. And after points, maybe perhaps you have a tool I don't know whether you came across this anytime. Called, came across this harpoon anytime? Harpoon, huh? Harpoon. Harpoon looks something like this. That belongs to a much later age, sir, not the Middle Paleolithic. Middle Paleolithic people were happy with the points. Point has a problem. Even if it goes and strikes the fish may do this and it may get out of it. But if it is the harpoon, it just properly goes and fixes into the flesh. Very difficult to get disentangled. And there is an assured kind of a hunt there. And then after that came maybe the fishing nets and all kinds of things. And now you have the modern fishing boats. No? Within a few minutes you can empty the ocean and come back, kind of. That's how things are. No. Point, we don't call them core tools. They are intentional tools. But we don't name them core tools. Core tool is a special word that they have used for the lower Paleolithic hand axes and those variety of tools there, other than accidental flakes. May I go, sir, to the other one? So, borer is another term that is they generally used for burin. Borer, graver, burin, they come as synonyms. But then, based on the individual archaeologists, the titles varied. Like how the same tool was given different names by different people. Somebody called them gravers, somebody called them borers, burins. Let me give you something else. Mesolithic, sir. Don't worry much about them. I only have given some examples there. Mesolithic was a time of microlithic tools. Microlithic, so very microlithic that it would fit just like this. The tools were of this particular length, or no, not so thick, of course. So this could be the length of the tool. They are microlithic tools of different shapes. So you can see there that man at that time was able to make stone tools into triangles, into maybe that lunates, whatever. Most puzzling period was Mesolithic. What man was doing with so small tools? So archaeologists concluded that that was the age of small life forms. You don't need huge boulders, huge hand axes to kill small life forms. Accuracy was necessary. Precision was necessary. So small tools. I will actually in tomorrow's class try to show to you the actual museum pictures of each of these varieties so that you understand how micro the microliths were. For people like Bhattacharya, burins and harpoons were one and the same. There were some intricate differences which we will see. Out of everybody, archaeologists are the best storytellers. They have to create stories from nothing. They only find some stone somewhere, have to create a story behind the stone. Story should be so impressive that difficult to challenge and disprove. Lunate, trapeze, trapezoid. In trapeze you have three sides other than the longer edge that are retouched. In the case of trapezoid, non-parallel edges are retouched. Don't know what under the globe they were doing with them. May I go? This was Mesolithic. Then suddenly tools become bigger. Neolithic. Neolithic was a time of celts. Celts are nothing but axes and adzes. Look at the axe. Axe here has got smaller cutting edge. And in the Neolithic, we find that there is a combination of blunt tools and sharpened tools. It is not necessary that every tool has to be sharpened. We have seen the mice head ringstone a little while ago, the tenicoid thing that is here. Basalt battle axe is a very thin one, something like this, very thin one. But you see the cutting edges. It's something like this, there's a hole, so this is made up of basalt, and on both the sides you see the cutting edges, that's the something like, something like a parabola, So something like an elliptical shape there. And then you have the cutting edges, you have a hole there. And the archaeologists, they call it basalt battle axe, because at some places they found something like a handle that has come with them. This is the wooden handle, which is properly tied into the hole, and of course it comes up like that. Basalt battle axe, because the places where they have found such kind of evidence, they were also the places where they found human long bones being broken. People belonging to different racial stocks, people with long bones broken, so most probably that was an ethnic violence that was going on. You have Sarsen stone. Sarsen stone you have seen a little while ago, a picture that I have shown. Masale wala jo patthar hai, that's nothing but sarsen stone that's used for sharpening the tools. I tried to do with my own imagination, please. Use your own. Assam was a true variety, which we will see. I'll write down at the top so that people at the back. So once these pictures are there at your fingertips, we'll be able to discuss things. The first one at the bottom, tangled axe. Then I have written splayed axe. Splayed axe. That is another variant there. You have a grooved hammer. This is something like your modern hammer only, but made up of stone. So you actually fix like this, hammer stone. These are those varieties that you found in that age only in the northeastern Neolithic. Grooved hammerstone. So man was trying to learn from his environment, trying to create wonders because he had no exams to write, no schools to attend. Sir. Celt is a combination of axe and adzes. Both are stone tools, both are fixed in hammers. Yatha. So, you try revising what you have done today. Tomorrow properly we would start talking about Paleolithic. We are at 44. Paper 1. Yes. Archaeology. Sources will be, one is your book Archaeological Anthropology. The second one is your class note. What you'll have to do in the homework is H.D. Sankalia. Have a great time. See you tomorrow.